Welcome, friends. Let's begin this adapted exploration of our study of the dissipation of glamour and the dispelling of illusion, and integrate other studies with it. We'll call this continuing series Ideas, Illusions, and Ideals, Imagination and Impressions. We're moving forward as a discipleship group as we endeavor to dispel illusion, integrating our understanding of the science of triangles and the science of the centers as part of the great science of relationships. We hope to achieve spiritual discernment on the causal plane of the soul vehicle, called by many the causal body, and by others the soul vehicle. Master DK says, in teaching his disciples, often is asked, how can I in my small sphere be of service to the world? Let me, Master DK, reply to these questions by pointing out that by thinking this teaching into the minds of the public, by expressing before your fellow men the teaching it imparts, and by a life lived in conforming with its teaching, your service is very real. So let us align our bodies as we have used Roberto Assazioli's methodology. From the highest point attained that we call the soul, each of us as an individual. Hold that point and say, I have a body, I am not my body. I have emotions, I am not my emotions. I have a mind, I am not my mind. And bringing those bodies into alignment under the control of the soul, say, I am the soul. I am light divine. I am love. I am will. I am fixed design. And from the highest point, see below a great shaft of light developing, linking all the activities of the lower bodies with ease. And see the soul controlling the outer form and life and all events. And the soul bringing to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. From the soul point, send a light to the center of the assembled group, the very heart of the group that has come together today. And a great soul light radiating out and touching all the groups with which we are affiliated, our nations, our families and communities, our service groups, And let us sound an Om to be heard right at the center of this group, proclaiming God is all. Om. In all our endeavors, we aim to achieve spiritual discernment. Ellen, would you read this for us, please? And I would.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let us begin by recalling what we learned from esoteric astrology in relation to energies and the expanding consciousness. We, Master DK and his associates, speak at times of an expanding universe. What we really mean is an expanding consciousness. For this etheric body of the entity, space, is the recipient of many types of informing and penetrating energies. And it is also the field for the intelligent activity of the indwelling lives of the universe, of the many constellations, of the distant stars, of our solar system, of the planets within the system, and of all that constitutes the sum total of these separated living forms. The factor which relates them is consciousness and nothing else. And the field of conscious awareness is created through the interplay of all living, intelligent forms within the area of the etheric body of that great life, which we call space.
So we will pause briefly to consider this in depth in relation to a couple of ideas. One idea is that when we approach any of the signs in our annual cycle, as we are now in Virgo, we have many ideas about the consciousness that is available to any human being on several different levels. And we're given many ideas and many things in relation to that we are to consider in our different groups and for us as individuals. what have you learned about the consciousness of Virgo in relation to your nation, if you happen to be part of the nation of Greece or part of the nation of Australia that have a predominant Virgo in their makeup? What do you have if is in Virgo in your own sign that you relate to consciousness, this great consciousness and the penetrating energies in relation to Virgo and the interplay of all the living, intelligent forms within the etheric body at the level that you are aware? Another important idea that is expressed by DK that relates to this and to our further study of illusion in particular is the creation of the aura as a sphere. What else do we need to remember about the aura created first by the solar angel and then developed by the soul personality? Martine, would you read this for us, please?
Yes. The aura of any form of life can be defined as the quality of a sphere of radiatory activity. The aura is usually spoken of in terms of color and of light, due to the nature of the vision of the one who sees and the apparatus of response which is in use. Two words only describe an aura from the point of view of occult knowledge, and they are quality and sphere of influence. What the clairvoyant really contacts is an impression which the mind rapidly translates into the symbology of color, whereas there is no color present. Seeing an aura, as it is called, is in reality a state of awareness that the seer may, in all sincerity, believe that he has registered a color, a series of color or light, is entirely true in many cases, but what he has really recorded is the quality of a sphere of radiatory activity. This he does when his own individual sphere of radiatory activity is of the same nature and quality as that contacted.
How do we, as individuals and in group, maintain the detachment required to really hold this idea that when we sense color, when we have a symbol that comes to mind, that this is an impression. It's a valid impression. It is a way of unifying used by many teachers, including Master DK. how can we hold that level of detachment and dispassion and recognize that our impressions are related to quality and sphere of influence. So this is from our study of the essential relation of mind and brain, where we looked at the different sheaths of the brain and the fact that there are different ways of expressing life, quality, and appearance at each of these levels of the sheaths. The first one being the etheric physical, which generally is the neurological system governing instinct, our will to be, to survive. And this is something that actually is very tied to glamour. It's below our level of awareness sometimes. And in our studies, we have our lowest consciousness, and it is that reactiveness that will happen where you'll have a guttural or you'll have a reaction in your body to something. It either feels good or it feels not so good. And it relates to that astral level where we're told most are now polarized, which is that emotional function of the neurological system. And it is really tied into the brain, which people have studied the fight or flight reaction of the instinct that becomes the tribal brain, that is the emotional brain of a nation, governing the emotional response to the environment or the relationships, and then the tribes within the nation. And even within families, there'll be this emotional dissonance and an aspiration. Usually it's to satisfy a personal need and develop into desire to be part of something, that tribe or group. And it can literally kind of hide as aspiration, a spiritual aspiration of a group, a spiritual group, because the group wants to sustain itself when there's a challenge to its ring pass knot. And there's a level of astral polarization that does occur naturally, and it's a desire to protect the integrity of that group or the integrity of the family. And it's an astral integrity. It is not a mental integrity. It's the desire to be loved, the desire to control, or the desire to create within a certain set of boundaries. And it is aspiration. And we do develop this and in group create a higher aspiration on that high level of the astral plane. We have the concrete mental sheath. It's the functions of the neurological system that are governing our will to manifest, our executive functions, our desire to achieve, the desire for power over the self, or the desire for power over others. This is the decision-making capacity, the concrete mental level, and it is seeking a level of awareness or higher consciousness. It is that ability to predict, to use the higher imagination to visualize, to use the higher imagination to plan, to create a meditation, to create a group focused on a particular higher inspired idea, and to organize a group around that concrete visualization and that concrete plan. It's an essential part of our moving inspired to the higher mind. where the sheath is soul inspired in a way. It is the causal body developing, and that is linked into the neurological system, responsive to higher ideals, higher ideas, the higher evolutions, and our spiritual vibration. That light, then, that becomes illumination as the egoic lotus unfolds and allows the individual to become more and more illumined and to be able to then receive impulses from and inspiration from the higher levels. So let's pause briefly to re-assimilate this in relation to where we have come as a group by using the technique of light. So we're working directly with this constitution of man, and in the essential relationship, the fifth essential relationship, that of the relation of the higher centers above the diaphragm with the lower centers. We'll refer to this a lot because what is being developed using the concrete mind is this mental unit bridging to the higher mental plane and developing discrimination. And we'll refer to this again shortly. No, I didn't move that correctly. So as we begin to look at this concept of illusion, we need to look at the idea of impressions of ideals and ideas from the hierarchy and the spiritual triad. And alignment and vibration must be understood and achieved and practiced. So would someone like to read further, starting at Forget Not, Master DK's words in relation to this and the constitution of man? Katie, could you read?
For reception of impressions of ideals and ideas from the hierarchy, spiritual triad, alignment and vibration must be understood, achieved, and practiced. Forget not either that it is largely a question of matter and vibration. The abstract levels of the mental plane consist of the three higher levels. The first being that termed a third subplane, spiritual discernment. As I have explained to you before, each subplane has its correlations on the major planes. When, therefore, you have built into your bodies physical, 7, 3 sight, emotional, 6, 3 clairvoyance, mental, 5, 3 spiritual discernment, matter of the third subplane of each of those planes, then the higher self commences consciously and ever more continuously to function through the aligning personality. Perhaps we might reverse the idea and state that it is only when third subplane matter of a certain percentage, which percentage is one of the secrets of initiation, is contained in the vehicles, that the personality as a conscious whole recognizes and obeys the higher self.
This may be one of the most important realizations for each one of us to have achieved in our own development. And it is really not for anyone else to have noted it, but it is a personal notation, and it is part of one's relationship with one's soul and higher self. It's a matter of what has been built in previous incarnations and in the work that is done in this incarnation that builds this substance into those third subplane matter vehicles in the personality. And so having achieved enough of that matter to have some vision, to be able to actively, in your own experience, achieve a level of clairvoyance. It doesn't mean that you have to be labeled a clairvoyant by anyone else, but you have to be able to see on a higher level. And that creates the ability to connect with the causal body, which is on the third subplane of the mental plane for the majority of humanity. And that is this level of spiritual discernment. And to have that in play in your daily experience and recognizing yourself as this conscious whole and obeying that higher self. And it is one of the reasons I think that DK tells us that so many of us still have these glamours that are inhibiting us, and it's hard work because it is consciously noting those and dissipating those continuously in our life experience. And that assists us in developing this higher spiritual discernment. So take a moment and let's pause briefly and consider that in your own equipment. When was it that you recognized that your personality and soul were in this relationship of developing your higher consciousness? Could have been as a child, could have been as a young adult, could be as an adult in spiritual work or in service. So again, noting this point here, the fifth, the mental plane, the third subplane, spiritual discernment, where the soul vehicle and mental polarization occurs, begins to occur with that realization. And through the process of initiation, then along the path of initiation, the causal body develops and eventually moves to the second subplane, the response to group vibration. And that is the group vibration of that fourth group that DK tells us to focus on. And that is our ashramic group. It is not the service group. For many different ashramic servers are working with our service groups. There may be one primary teacher, master, but there are many individual ashramic groups that senior disciples on the other side are affiliated with, and it is much to learn to discern clearly what happens at that point. Anna shares that it comes with the awareness of the God, growing in faith. Yes, for some it is called faith. For others, it is called a level of awareness a level of consciousness, and the ability to perceive oneself in the broader vision and discarding all selfish polarization. So in faith groups, it's even used the notation of a saint in many groups. It's a saint or a master within a particular line. It's a very important point that we begin to use terminology that actually guides you to what a potential ashramic affiliation might be. And that's a very important determination. And it is different for different individuals and different ashramic affiliations. Thank you so much for your comments. Well, golly, I had several things. So after such a percentage is attained, it is then necessary to build in matter of the two higher subplanes. And they are taste and imagination. And taste has a resonance with a much higher, the atmic plane, actually. And imagination has that resonance with the Buddhic plane. So these are on, at this point, the physical and emotional planes. And he says, hence the struggle for the aspirant to purify and discipline the physical body and to subdue the emotional. Purification and subjugation describe the work to be done on these two planes. And this involves the use of the lower mind, and the three lower vehicles thus become aligned. So a note that is important: all teachers who have taken pupils in hand for training, all those masters, and who seek to use them in world service, follow the method of imparting a fact, often veiled in words and blinded by symbol. Very important to remember this. Veiled in words and blinded by symbol. And then of leaving the pupil to follow his own deductions. So in many religions, this is the path to world service. They're imparting a fact that actually is a fact on a higher level. It's veiled in words that can be heard and understood in a particular religion, a particular faith group, a particular psychological orientation, and blinded by a symbol. For example, the labors of Hercules uses the blinds of symbols. And it leaves you then to follow your own deductions. Discrimination is thereby developed, and discrimination is the main method whereby the spirit effects its liberation from the trammels of matter and discerns between illusion and that which is veiled by it. So again, think about your own practices over the years in your studies, in moving toward our world service, which in this group is toward group service in the dissipation of glamour, but eventually world service in the dissipation of world glamour. We are using discrimination and developing discrimination. And we're going to, a demand of us is that we surface the words that have veiled and the symbols that have blinded us in previous studies, helping us to follow our own deductions, and yet lifting those to a point where there's no judgment, no criticism, only a building awareness of the higher in relation to our work together as a group. And to recognize the trammels of matter that we are clothed in. And in Virgo, this is what we are clothed in. Christ is hidden within us in the trammels of matter. Those are our words, our actions, anything that separates us from others in the trammels of matter. And to be able to clearly understand for ourselves how to move past that, because we are in the veil of illusion. Those bodies, our lower bodies, are illusion. The illusion we live and move and have our being in. So we will continue to develop this discrimination and move towards spiritual discernment. Why do I keep getting that up? And we will emphasize at times the lower concrete mind through conscious, creative work. We will control this through the processes of concentration. And we will utilize the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus, capable of pronounced soul illumination and developing this searchlight of the soul. Through that, we can relate to the monastic permanent atom and to the abstract mind. So this will be our emphasis in moving forward. And we're going to close at this point. And we'll continue next Sunday morning and work through the rest of the slides in this particular set. You have them sent to you in a PDF form. We'll give you a chance to consider some thoughts about the relation of the rest of the slides as we move forward together next Sunday using the same link and at the same time. If you have any thoughts during the week, please send an email. And if you have any follow-up to any one of these ideas, please include it in an email, and we will continuously improve by adding these to the slide set. Let us sound the mantra of group fusion in closing, breathing in easily and effortlessly, and ponder on this mantra of group fusion as we enter into the coming week. I am one with my group brothers and sisters, and all that I have is theirs. May the love of the one soul pour forth to all. May the energy of the one soul lift and aid all. May the thoughts which the group creates reach and encourage all. May the blessings of the divine self be spread abroad in our thoughts, through our groups, and throughout the world.